Hello, my name is Glenn Andreiev. I'm a filmmaker and film historian, and today we're going to be talking about movie posters and the art of selling movies. Movie posters are really cool. I mean, look at a poster like this. It's for a film that doesn't get played all that much, Maya. It's not really a great movie. It's a lot of fun, and this is one of the few times the poster actually pretty much adds up to what the contents of the movie is. Where it says, actually filmed in India's Valley of the Tigers. Yeah, they actually went to India and they filmed part of this movie there. And it's kind of interesting, just a little side note, it doesn't have to do too much with posters. This is directed by John Barry, who is a blacklisted filmmaker, and it's produced by the King brothers, who got in some trouble because they were hiring artists that were blacklisted during the communist witch hunt era. So, movie posters really begin before the birth of movies. Now look at the advertising for Barney the Vampire. You know, where he's got all that hippie hair with the exposed rib cage. And he's got all these guys all around him. This was published in 1847 as a penny dreadful. Now, we go ahead 50 years later to 1896, and this is probably the first movie poster. It's advertising a showing of short films by the Lumiere Brothers, who would make short films that don't have stories. They'd have images of a train pulling into a station, or factory workers leaving their job. You know, the whole marvel was you're watching this image on the wall move, which people in 1896 never really saw. Thomas Edison, yes, the Thomas Edison, was also a film producer. And in 1910, he produced a 16-minute film version of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Now, you look at the film today, it's kind of odd looking. The monster's kind of weird looking there. It's not really a great film, but it's interesting. This is the first film adaptation of Mary Shelley's novel. And look at the playbill, and they'd use one key image during this time. You think about the poster for Theda Barrett and Cleopatra, or this eye-catching poster for 1916's The Green Spider that was produced in Russia. There were magazines that went to the many movie theater owners, advertising movies that were near completion, that the theater owner could book. And sometimes they'd be very elegant in their advertising, like this 1916 version of Romeo and Juliet that was actually filmed in the Huntington Bay, Haleside area. Unfortunately, this film is now lost. Sometimes the film producers would use current events, like the sinking of the Lusitania, to advertise this film. Another way of advertising upcoming movies is the use of glass slides, very similar to this. That you'd slip this slide in, and there'd be an advertisement for a movie, an upcoming movie. As you see here, these slides are beautiful. These slides today are collector's items. Look at this poster for the 1925 Ben-Hur, and you can see the art of movie posters is becoming more and more sophisticated. Now, another type of movie advertisement that was coming up at this time was the movie trailer, where you'd see this 2 or 3 minute short film made up of highlights of the film. This film would play at a theater that was going to play that film in about 2 weeks. So very often you see at the end of the trailer, coming to this theater soon. This trailer, made for Sunrise, a very beautiful film made at the end of the silent era, is trying something new. They are including quotes from renowned critics in the advertising. Now in the sound era, we're starting to see scenes from the film in the trailers. Now here, the trailer for the Marx Brothers film Duck Soup. What's interesting, being a Marx Brothers fanatic like I am, I could tell they're using an alternate take for the trailer. And I see this very often in movie trailers where they're using the other take for the trailer.
Hello? Hello, yes? No, he's not in yet. All right, well, goodbye. That was for you again. I wonder whatever became of me.
Now, give an example of how not to advertise your movie. We have this right here. 10 Nights in a Bar Room. This is a re-release of D.W. Griffith's last film, The Struggle, his second sound film made in 1931. It did terrible at the box office in 31, and 9 years later there was an attempt to redistribute the film under a different title and sneak it on the public again. Now, inventive as D.W. Griffith was as a filmmaker, one of his downfalls or faults was that he thought people were rushing to theaters to see really preachy, high moral sermons on being good. So, yes, he thought people would really rush to the theaters to see these two guys. Now, movie posters serve a double function. Before you see the movie, you'd see this poster outside the theater for I Married a Witch, and it looks engrossing. There's the two of the big stars of the day, Frederick March and Veronica Lake. And then when you leave the theater, after you've just seen the movie, there's the poster again. And you look at it, and you see in the corner Robert Benchley, who's very funny in the movie. And you have this now warmer feeling about the movie you've just seen and enjoyed. So if somebody asks you right afterwards, what movie did you see? Oh, I saw I Married a Witch. Oh, it was so good. It was so funny. You see that a lot, especially for like a serious film like Double Indemnity, which is about this couple, Fred McMurray and Barbara Stanwyck, plotting a murder and executing the murder. And the investigator, Edward G. Robinson, up there in the corner, is right on their tail. And you leave the theater, you see the poster again, and you're like, yeah, Edward G. Robinson, he was so great in that film. I can't wait to tell my friends about this movie. Back in the 1930s and 40s, there was no YouTube, there was no DVD, there was no downloading. So if a movie played in a theater and it was very good, it would be bought back maybe several years later, 7 or 8 years later. Now in the case of Reap the Wild Wind, directed by Cecil B. DeMille, the film's a tremendous hit, and of course the poster has the two romantic leads of the film, John Wayne and Paulette Goddard. And you look down the cast list is a newcomer, Susan Hayward. Now when they re-release Reap the Wild Wind 10 years later, Paulette Goddard's star status has gone down. You know, she's not doing so many movies by this time. But Susan Hayward, her star has risen. So in this re-release poster, Susan Hayward is billed right underneath star John Wayne. Now we get into the 1950s, where posters are becoming a lot more fun. Like, look at this poster for Volcano. See that? Really advertising the exploitive aspects of the film. You know, these fights underwater and fights, again, above ground. There it is. Lava hot. Fury. Power. Passion. And Anna Magnani down there. Now, films, of course, in the 1950s, they're becoming more exploitive. Censorship rules are beginning to lessen. So the movies could show more and talk about more adult subjects. So you have a poster like this for A Girl in Trouble. And yeah, it's obviously a movie about a girl in trouble. I've never seen it. But what makes it so much fun is, you look at the bottom here. This film is shown in its original uncut version. Children under 16 will not be admitted with or without their parents. Special police will enforce this order. Now, is anybody's grandparents part of the special Girl in Trouble police? Now, during this time, you had a lot of small budget film production companies. They weren't interested in earning an Oscar and getting 4 stars from the critics. They just wanted to quickly make exploitive films, get them out there, make a lot of money. They didn't really care if the film was sort of on the lurid side. What these companies would do first is that they would make the poster before they even write the movie, and they would test these posters out on people, and they'd say, does this type of movie interest you? And if they said no, then the movie would be not even written. But if they said, yeah, I want to see this movie, boom, within a couple of weeks, they're making Invasion of the Saucermen. Now, during this post-war period, the 1950s, you were seeing a lot of films come from different countries, such as the films of Federico Fellini from Italy, Ingmar Bergman from Sweden, the films of Akira Kurosawa from Japan. General public in America at the time really didn't care for these subtitled or dubbed films from other countries. So some distributors really had to like spice things up. So you look at the case of Summer with Monica, made in 1952 by the great Ingmar Bergman. And it's a film about a sort of illicit romance between two young people during a summer break. Now, the American distributor H. Kroger Babb, who's like notorious for just being such this exploitive, crazy film promoter, he takes this film and he advertises it as this, this lurid tale of passion, and you have to make special babysitting arrangements in order to see this movie. I don't know why, but then you have the case of one of my favorite films, Akira Kurosawa's 1952 film, Ikaru, which is a really sweet movie about a bureaucrat who finds out he has late-stage cancer, and he decides in these last few months where he can really make his life worthwhile, really leave a very positive impact in his community. And the film's a tremendous hit, but they didn't know how to initially sell this movie in America. Now, the solution on how to sell this movie to a big crowd comes from the movie itself. There's a scene in the film where our hero goes to a nightclub, and we get this very brief glimpse of a burlesque dancer. So she becomes the star attraction of the poster. She's in this movie that lasts about 130 minutes. She's in there for about 8 seconds. But now she's selling the movie. You see the reverse of this when certain science fiction and horror films would be exported to different countries. Like, look at this poster for Godzilla from Poland, where they make him less scary. The not so scary but very weird Godzilla versus the Smog Monster, Godzilla's kind of pop art. Now, if you owned a movie theater at the time, very often from the studios you would get one of these, the Showmans Manual. And what a Showmans Manual would do, this is for Abbott and Costello and Coming Around the Mountain, it would show you different types of posters that they made available for you. And you have to be very careful. This is about maybe 70 years old, so you have to handle this very carefully. But you see, you get all these different type of posters, so you can decide how you want to sell the movie at your theater. And what they also have in here, again, you have to be very careful, is they would have these suggestions here as to how to sell your movie around your neighborhood. You have a hillbilly costume contest for kids, so that brings in families, and promotes square dancing at local public places. Now, for Black Sunday, right here, here's the DVD of it. It's a terrific horror film, very atmospheric, made in Italy by talented director Mario Bava, starring Barbara Steele. When this film was released in America, released by American International Pictures, in their press books they would say, why not have a contest amongst the teenage girls in the neighborhood all dress up as witches, and the winner gets to see the movie for free. For the Japanese film Mothra, which, as you see in the American poster, the twin fairies are not as burlesque as these girls here, American distributors for Mothra were suggesting to theater owners that, why don't you go to places where buildings have just been demolished, or if a building's just went on fire and it's the ruins are sitting there, put up these posters that say Mothra was here. I don't know how legal that is, but this is like the crazy way that movies were being promoted back then. Now, for the stupidest idea to promote a movie, I think, is in 1962, Richard Basehart was in a film biography of Hitler. It was titled Hitler. And the distributors suggested to the theater owners, have a Hitler look-alike contest. So, I don't know if any theater did this, but wow. Now, times would certainly change from the time a film is first released to when it's re-released. So you look at the 1940 poster for Walt Disney's Fantasia, and it kind of puts you in the mode that Disney wanted. It's a very sweet, artistic film with Mickey Mouse and a whole bunch of other characters. When the film is re-released in the late 1960s during the hippie era, they really wanted to promote the psychedelic aspects of the film. Look at this poster, promoting the trippiness of the film. One key figure in the way movies were promoted was the great Sal Bass. Bass would do something different. You look at this poster for late 1940s film Johnny Belinda. There's just different scenes from the movie. Sal Bass would break away from that. He would have these very abstract, cubistic images tied into the film. So you think of The Man with the Golden Arm, which is about drug addiction, about shooting up heroin, starring Frank Sinatra, a very, very startling film. For the same, for the same director, Otto Preminger, you have Anatomy of a Murder, and other film producers are beginning to imitate Sal Bass in the way they're promoting their films. So you look at this poster for 1961, The Jailbreakers. You know, it looks like a big piece of shattered glass with just these very vague, violent images of people here. And truthfully, I've seen The Jailbreakers. It's not all that good, but the poster is a lot better than the movie. You even see in like Kubrick's 1962 film, Lolita, it's kind of Sal Bass-like. After Stanley Kubrick made 2001 Space Odyssey, he was like one of the most world-respected directors. And now he had a lot of control over his films, including control on how the films are advertised. So Kubrick really did not care for this sort of Johnny Belinda style, let's show little snippets of the movie to the audience before they see the movie. You look at the poster for Clockwork Orange, and it just has this image of Malcolm McDowell. And then you think of his later posters for Barry Lyndon, which all it shows is the boots and somebody holding a dueling pistol. And The Shining, which is very vague, and just a helmet for Full Metal Jacket, and just the principles involved for Eyes Wide Shut. Now, all the posters you've seen right now pretty much have just painted images, artist rendering of the stars. So in the 70s, you're now beginning to see photographs in the posters for A Star is Born. Now, this particular poster, as you can see, it's folded. It's a one-sheet poster. It measures 27 inches by 41 inches. And the whole idea of why it's folded, because this is how it was delivered to theaters. It was folded so it could be delivered very easily, but it left these creases that would harm the poster. So many of these posters nowadays have these folds in them. It wouldn't be until the 1980s that posters would be delivered rolled. During the 1980s and 90s, posters would tend to have a very, very abstract quality to them. It really doesn't tell you much about the film other than the mood of the film, like it's scary, like Watchers. Or this poster that's not in the best condition for Poltergeist 2. That's using an iconic image from the first Poltergeist of Heather O'Rourke. Collecting movie posters has become a tremendous business, especially at conventions and on online venues such as eBay. And you think about some of the posters that have fetched tremendous amounts of money. Not every movie poster is going to do this. Now, you look at the Boris Karloff film, The Mummy, made in 1932. An original poster, not a re-release poster from the 40s, but an original poster from the 1930s, went for $400,000. That's about double the budget of the original film from 1932. Now, Metropolis has the highest price for a poster. This is one of the original posters from 1927, and it went for fetching $1 million. If you don't have anything better to do, check your attic, check your basement. There may be something down there that can bring in a lot of money. My name's Glenn Andreiev, and thanks for being here today, and have a good day.